Hi everyone, my name is Krishnaram Kenthapadi. I'm the Chief Scientist for Clinical AI at Oracle Health. It's my great pleasure to give an overview of some of the challenges related to trustworthiness when it comes to healthcare AI and what we have learned in the process. So first, across the world, the medical professionals, including doctors, nurses, and others, have been experiencing a clinical burden, and many surveys show that a large fraction of them plan to leave the workforce because of the clinical and administrative burden that they're experiencing. So a natural question for us is, how can we use AI to help reduce such administrative overhead, and as a result, hopefully improve the outcomes for the patients? If this question were posed to me a few years back, let's say even 4 or 5 years back, my response would have been categorically kind of no. The AI systems and models are not yet at a place where they can help address some of the complex needs of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. But what we have seen over the last few years is an evolution and maturity of especially large language models and other generative AI models. On the left, I'm showing the LLMs that have come out in the US just from the time of GPT-3 all the way to Llama 2. If you continue this all the way to the models we have today, it'll kind of go much beyond what's shown on the screen. At the same time, many of the challenges we have seen with the traditional machine learning or deep learning models continue to remain. Challenges ranging from bias and fairness to the need for explainability and so forth. At the same time, the LLMs and generative AI models introduce new challenges. For example, hallucinations. When right after ChatGPT was launched in late 2022, if you asked ChatGPT some of the medical related questions like how crushed porcelain can enhance the nutritional capabilities of breast milk, or how wood chips can enhance the taste of breakfast cereal, it would give a very assertive response saying that it is good to add these things. Clearly, this is not acceptable in a domain like healthcare. And of course, like since then, these models have improved substantially. And if you pose the same question today, you would not get such a response. And more broadly, there have been a number of regulations in the healthcare domain, and more broadly like the AI domain, ranging from regulations like HIPAA in the US to more recently the Office of National Coordinators, so Health Data Technology and Interoperability Act that came into effect at the end of last year. So given this landscape, let's kind of look at how do we ensure that we leverage AI to improve healthcare, but in a trustworthy manner. Uh, I'm going to use clinical documentation as a case study and walk through some of the challenges that arise in this space. Specifically, I'm going to focus on the generation of SOAP notes. So SOAP notes refer or summaries of the doctor-patient conversations. On the left, we have the transcript of a dialogue or interaction between the doctor and the patient. On the right, we have the medical notes in this format, capturing the subjective, objective information as well as the assessment of the doctor and the plan for treatment. There have been a number of tools to automatically generate SOAP notes, which can then be reviewed by the doctors and who can make maybe minor corrections, edits as needed, and then sign off. As an example, this is the screenshot of the clinical AI agent that we have launched from Oracle Health, showing how the interface would look like for a hypothetical patient and hypothetical doctor. So tools like the clinical AI agent have improved the experience of doctors a lot. For example, we have noticed that doctors using uh, our clinical AI agent have been able to reduce the time they spend on documentation every day by 30%. This can translate into multiple hours per day, and it can make a huge difference in the work life balance and the quality of care they can provide to their patients as a result. And, and a natural question for such tools is, how can we holistically evaluate such clinical text summarization methods? And also, how do they compare to medical experts? There have been a number of studies looking into these questions. So here is a study that came out last year, which studied four different tasks, including summarizing doctor-patient dialogue as well as radiology reports, progress notes, and so on. So what they did was they considered a few different models as well as a few different methods for adapting the models, including fine-tuning and in-context learning, and then took the results from the best model and also compared that to the summary generated by a medical expert. And then they showed both of these, the summary from the best model and the summary written by a medical expert, to a different set of medical experts and had them evaluate which ones they prefer. And to do this, they considered three broad categories of metrics called completeness, correctness, and conciseness. So completeness refers to whether the summary captures all the important information. Correctness refers to whether it includes any incorrect information, and conciseness is whether it includes any medically irrelevant information. What they noticed, surprisingly, was that along all these three dimensions, the summary generated by the best AI model was preferred more than the summary generated by the domain experts. And particularly in the case of completeness, this result was more pronounced, meaning that the AI model did a better job at capturing all the relevant information that was, say, discussed during a doctor patient dialogue, or that was present in a radiology report, and so forth. Here is another paper which also goes into a more detailed evaluation of different metrics. We can see that in a domain like healthcare, we not only care about accuracy or usefulness, but also aspects like, is the summary free from biases? Is the summary succinct? Is the summary organized well? How does the style of the summary look? So on and so forth. Or sometimes we even care about internal consistency. Is one part of the summary contradicting some other part of the summary, and so forth. And even in this study, they noticed that the AI based models were performing quite well with respect to all these metrics. A natural question at this point is, while these evaluations leveraged human experts, how can we perform such evaluation at scale? This was proposed in another recent work called DocLens. So here, what the authors did was they used they extracted the facts from the original dialogue as well as the facts from the LLM based summary, and then compared these two sets of facts to determine completeness, conciseness, and so forth. And so completeness in this case would mean that does each fact from the original dialogue uh, present or can be inferred from the LLM summary? Or conciseness would correspond to can each fact in the LLM based summary be inferred from the original doctor patient dialogue? In addition to these two metrics, which can be automatically captured using natural language inference methods, they also looked at attributions. can each fact present in the summary be attributed to the corresponding parts of the doctor patient dialogue? And they also looked at whether the attributions are correct and whether they're relevant in the context of the summary and so forth. And yet, going beyond this, we were wondering, how do we evaluate such summarization methods, not only for correctness but also for, let's say, bias and stereotypes? And how do we go about designing benchmarks to achieve this? So we presented some early results in the NeurIPS 2024 workshop on algorithmic fairness. And the way we did was, again, like if we start with the soap notes, uh, there is a possibility for the automatically generated soap note to contain maybe biases or different types of stereotypes, or even may contain hallucinations or toxic statements. And our goal was to develop a benchmark to systematically measure the extent of this. And to do this, what we did was we started with a few publicly available medical data sets like MTS Dialog and ACI Bench. We used an LLM to generate adversarial variations, wherein we injected stereotypical contexts based on age, race, gender, and so forth, and then had an LLM generate the corresponding SOAP note. And then we performed counterfactual evaluations between the original dialogue and the dialogue with the stereotype injected. So to make this concrete, here is an example. Like on the left, we have the original dialogue, and the counterfactual substitutions here are with respect to ethnicity. Instead of white, we substitute with the Asian, Hispanic, and so forth. And then we generate the medical note using an LLM based approach, and we then compare the differences between the generated notes using an approach similar to the Docklands approach I showed earlier. And we measure with respect to metrics like completeness and conciseness. And what we found was that there is variation in length and structure of the generated notes depending on the stereotypical context and depending on the choice of the demographic variable like race or age and so forth. And sometimes we did notice that the models tend to hallucinate on names or have different interpretations of the stereotype depending on the demographic group that we're looking at. And here is a more quantitative evaluation of the extent to which this happens. And we do see that in certain kind of subsets of the SOAP note, like review of symptoms or history of present illness, the extent of completeness is lower than other parts of the SOAP note. Taking a step back, we want to understand what are the kind of broader use cases of AI in healthcare, and what are some of the kind of trustworthiness related challenges. Um, Again, like a paper from last year performs a very systematic summary of close to 500 plus papers on using AI for healthcare applications. And they grouped the tasks into all these different tasks. You can see that there are tasks like summarization, but also tasks like educating patients or writing prescriptions, triaging patients, and so forth. And they notice that there are a few different NLP or natural language understanding tasks which are used across all these different healthcare tasks. These range from summarization to translation, text classification, and so on. And what they emphasize is that we should not only look at metrics like accuracy, but also trustworthiness notions like calibration and uncertainty, measures of robustness, factuality, fairness and bias, and as well as also deployment considerations. Do these models work well, not only during development, but also once they're deployed in practice? Do the quality and other metrics continue to hold even after the models are deployed? And how do we go about monitoring and observing these metrics over time. To kind of summarize, yeah, I just want to highlight a few lessons that we have learned uh, in the context of building such summarization tools. One lesson is that it's very important to focus on the quality of the data and the way we go about designing the evaluations, in addition to just developing the models. Um, Understanding of the domain is extremely important. By understanding the domain, I'm referring to working closely with the stakeholders. In this case, the stakeholders would include doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals, and kind of having them in the loop early on and rapidly iterating with customers is extremely important. And in addition to just the quality metrics in a domain like healthcare, the trust, safety, and observability are crucial, and they are important not only for meeting legal and compliance requirements, but also to build and retain customer trust over a period of time. There are a number of open challenges that I would encourage all of us to think about. How do we understand failure modes of LLM based healthcare systems, and so that we can decide when an LLM based approach should be used and when we should defer to domain experts instead? Or how do we kind of leverage many different modalities of input? How do we jointly model, say, clinical note generation, billing and claims, and other administrative tasks, and so on? If you are interested in more, I would encourage you to take a look at a tutorial we presented in the KDD conference last year. There is an accompanying survey article as well. And with that, let me conclude to emphasize that there are a number of exciting challenges in terms of applying AI in healthcare with both social and economic impact. And to reiterate, trustworthy AI is crucial not only during the design of this, but also once they are deployed and for sustained adoption of AI-based approaches in healthcare. And these include all these different metrics like robustness, bias, transparency, red teaming, and so on, and also having AI observability and monitoring mechanisms after systems are deployed in practice. Thank you.